All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Alejandro Gonzalez, or Alex, and I'm the lead Adobe evangelist here at the U of A. And what we're going to do today is create a composite together in Photoshop. And composite means made of multiple images in this case. A lot of the images we see in our life are composites in some way or another. So it's a very common technique. I'm assuming a tiny bit of experience, but I will go slow and don't feel intimidated. And if you feel like you're having trouble following along, this will be posted on the website. You can watch and kind of try some things we go along, but there will be plenty of time for questions. Ask me to pause and repeat. I'm hoping you can do this with us. So, that's the fun of it. So if we look here, we have a web page. And someone else just joined. Let me get that. Well, they called in, so they're gone again. Okay. This will be our resource. And what we're going to do is kind of make our off-brand version of the Photoshop splash loading screen, which every year or two, they change the image and they invite an artist to be displayed. So this particular artist is Ted Chin, who makes these surreal composites. You can visit his website if you like. Pretty fun stuff. All examples of images made up of multiple images, some more complicated than others, like this pyramid blended with a Campbell might take a lot more work than putting a dragon in the sky. All right. And this is what we're going to make, which is I just went on Adobe Stock and found images that I thought I could use to make our version of it. So his is definitely going to be a lot more polished because he had all the time in the world to do it and the details, but I think we'll feel pretty good about what we make. So on Adobe Stock, I went and found all of these assets and licensed them and made a little library. And the reason I used Adobe Stock is because I knew they would be high quality and I would have the rights to them. And also because while I could go to the zoo and photograph some flamingos, and then I could find a day to photograph clouds and go find an island at a nice sunset, that would be a big time commitment. On top of it, some of these things are really hard for me to get, like the ocean and some fish underwater. So having high quality assets at your fingertips is really, really great. And by the way, I hope you're all doing well. I forgot to ask how we're all doing. I've been a little under the weather, so if my voice gets weirder towards the end, I apologize, but I'm happy to be here. Okay, so what we're going to do is this. If we see this video, this is the entire process condensed to 25 seconds. And it's just a series of placing, transforming, selecting, masking, a little bit of blending, and a little bit of adjusting. So we'll do a lot of the same steps over and over again in different ways, which I think is good. It's good to have practice. Can I get out of this? Okay. And I have put the steps in here on this resource that will say what we did first: create a canvas, place your mountain, select it. But I'm going to go ahead and close this. We're not going to need it anymore as long as you've gone and downloaded the assets. Everybody ready? Got Photoshop open? Got some thumbs up. I'll take them. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this one. You can see all of my layers are on the right-hand side. And if we kind of dismantle this image, we have the sky. Let's take the background off. We have the clouds. The flamingos have been disembodied, which is okay. It's just pixels. So each piece of the flamingo is its own layer. And you can see I didn't carefully remove that because the clouds are hiding it. And I put all the flamingos in a folder. Then we have the mountains. And then we have the ocean. And we have our fish. And there's a few adjustments in there. So let's go ahead and go for it. While we're in Photoshop, let's go ahead and make a new document. We're going to go File and New, or you can click New File here on the blue button. And I originally started with a letter size, but I found it wasn't tall enough. So what I would do is, oops. If you go to Photo, no, let's not go to Photo. I'm trying to think of what's better. Well, let's go to Print and let's choose Letter. But let's change the height to 14. I think that'll give us a nice amount of space. We can always crop it down later. So I went File, New. I chose the Print presets and I chose Letter, and then I modified it to 8.5 by 14 inches. And then I'll click Create. That looks about right. And let's make a little room here. I think that should work. Okay, so I'm going to keep my Finder kind of visible here because I'm going to be placing by dragging and dropping. So our first step now is to put our mountains in there, put them somewhere that makes sense, and remove the background from them. So from wherever you downloaded your assets, go ahead and find the mountains image and drag it onto your canvas. If for whatever reason you don't like doing it that way, you can also go File and place linked is better. That's non-destructive, but which either one of those will work. And then I resized it so that the edges were pretty close to the edge of the canvas. In fact, let's check our original. Oh, of course, it's empty now. Okay. Okay, yeah, so it's touching the edge and it's almost at the edge. So I'm going to make it even bigger again. I'm going to press Command or Control T. Put it about here. I can always move it and resize it again. So we'll just choose right here. Got our mountain in our canvas. All right, I saw a couple thumbs up. Love it. So now what we're going to do is remove the background because we're putting a different sky on this image. So what we're going to use is a tool called the Object Selection tool, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 tools from the top. The keyboard shortcut is W. If you go here and you see something else like the magic wand or the quick select, just click and hold and grab the Object Selection tool. This is one of the newer selection tools that takes a lot of the busy work out of making selections. So I always start with this one. And what you do is you just draw a box around what you want to select. So I want these mountains. I'm going to draw a box like this. It's going to think about it, and then I'll end up with marching ants following the edge of my mountains. Does anybody need to see that again? After you've got your selection, you're going to go to the bottom of your layers and you're going to mask the mountains, which means it's going to keep the mountains and hide the other pixels. So that's the rectangle with a circle in it next to the letters FX.
I have a question.
Of course.
Like, what if I don't want a whole mountain? I just want like a part of that. Like, then what should we do?
So
Such as I just want the bottom of the mountain. I don't want a whole.
So we don't have to worry about the bottom of the mountain. This is what's called using layers to your advantage. When we put the ocean in here, which we're going to do next, it's going to hide the part of the mountain that we don't want, right? So if we look at this layer, we only have this part of the mountain, but it's actually the whole thing still. I'm just using layers to hide parts that I don't want to see as well. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, but like what I want to ask actually is like, do you see like the lower hills on the mountain, like
this right
the
here?
lowest one? Yeah. What if I just want this part?
Okay.
And then
so that's a great question. Let me go ahead and I'll show you how, and then we'll move forward here. But that's a good question. Let's say I only want this lower mountain. I can try using the object selection tool there and see if it finds it. And it does. So you just draw around what you like. But if you don't get that to work, that's when you try other tools like the quick select tool, where you paint inside what you'd like, and then you pull it back with option, which is kind of doesn't work as well. And then sometimes you just have to do it the hard way, which is with the pen tool, and you go and select exactly what you want and turn it into, you would do it very carefully, but there's a way to get exactly what you want. Then you right click.
Oh, okay.
Make selection. Cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's a good question. And what we try and do is make it easier for ourselves by creating images that will be easy to use the tools with, which this is an example of. All right, let's add the ocean. Is everybody ready for that? Here we go. Just drop it in there. And for this one, I made it quite a bit bigger. I think these rays, I think it gets cut off about here. So I'm going to scale it out. And I'm going to hit enter. And then this is one where I think the object selection tool didn't quite do what we wanted, which might be another answer to your question. Oh. How's that look? That looks pretty good. Last time it didn't work very well. Last time I had to select just this part. Okay, so we'll select the bottom half like this. And this next step will be easier because what I originally had to do was paint it back in with the mask, which is another way to change how you're selecting. So just like before, select what you want to keep and then mask it. And then I'm going to grab the move tool, the very first tool on my toolbar, and just bring it down. Maybe about here. That's pretty good. If I want, I can pull the mountains up a little bit. That's kind of how they work together. And I mean, looks like I had less of the mountains in this one, but it doesn't matter, right? We're just having fun. And while we're here, while you guys are trying, these masks that we've been adding, we can edit them at any point. So if for whatever reason on the ocean, I wanted to see no ocean water underneath it, I could grab a paintbrush and paint with black to remove parts of the ocean. So we can edit on the fly as well. Okay, next step is the sky. Are we ready to add the sky? Or do we need to see anything again? I've got thumbs up. Let's go for it. The sky's an easy one. You just drop it in there. I'm going to zoom out, Command or Control plus, make it much bigger. And then choose which part I like. I think I like more blues. Hit enter. And then you'll grab the sky layer and move it underneath the mountains. And you can still move it around if you want to try different different sunset. Maybe more like this. That's kind of nice. What did I use here? I got some of the dark clouds. I think I like this today. Everybody got their sky? All right. So now we're going to actually build out those cloud flamingos, which is going to take a little more purposeful selecting, some more transformations, and we are going to have to make the clouds pink. But one nice thing about these clouds is that they are actually already isolated. So all I have to do is drag them in and place them where I think I want them. I'm going to move it to the top. So I've placed cloud 1 and cloud 2. We can resize later, so it's no big deal if it's not perfect. I took these clouds and made them black and white and gave them a little bit more contrast before I dropped them in here. That's something that we're not going to talk about a lot today, about making adjustments to get them to agree. I think we should practice just assembling things first. All right, and then it's up to you where you want to grab your flamingos from. I think I'm going to steal the legs of this flamingo and put them under the lower cloud, and then steal the legs from this flamingo and put them under the upper cloud. So let's do the legs first. So I'm going to grab flamingo 1, drop it in there, and I'm going to grab my object selection tool and draw a rectangle over the legs. It's pretty good. And you probably know the next step. We're going to mask it. And now we've got some flamingo legs. Pretty good. And what I want to do is get them behind the cloud and the mountains and make them smaller. So let's go ahead and grab flamingo 1, which I might double click and name legs, and move it all the way below the mountains layer. And then I'm going to press Command or Control T or go to Edit, Free Transform to get that bounding box back. And I'm going to shrink it down and put it right there. That's pretty good. I think that makes sense. Be a little there. And then I'm going to open Flamingo 2, drop it on there, or just drag it on there. Can't really see what I'm doing. I'm going to move it to the top. And I'm going to steal the legs from this one, just like I did before. Grab the object selection tool, click and drag over the legs. And again, I chose our images wisely so that these tools work nicely for us. If this flamingo had a bunch of other flamingos behind it, our tools might not work nicely and we might have to go in and select things the hard way, which you want to avoid. And we'll mask it. And these will be up here. Name them Flamingo 2 legs. It's a really good idea to keep good naming conventions in your layers, because you can see we've already got 7 layers going on here, and for a very fairly simple composite. All right, move it to the bottom. That kind of feels like the right size for them. Am I crazy? Maybe a little bit smaller. Oh yeah, that makes sense. How did I get the size adjustment box back? I pressed Command or Control T while on that layer. So on this cloud, if I find the cloud layer and I press Command or Control T, I get my adjustment box back, and I can make it bigger or smaller. Good question. You're very welcome. Command T is one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts. My favorite being Command Z to undo. or Control if you're on Windows. So now we're going to go chop some heads off of flamingos too. We already took their drumsticks. Let's go get their heads too. I'm going to pull in Flamingo 2 again. And I think it's easy to do it one at a time. So I'm going to take this left one and say, give me your head and neck, please. And then mask it. And then I'll just drop the image again and take the other one. You could have duplicated it, or you could have right-clicked, new layer via copy, but I just think this is the best non-destructive way. Okay, Flamingo 2 head. And speaking of naming conventions, we haven't saved our project yet. Oh, thanks, Anissa. And yeah, do what you need to do. And this will be on the website if you want to finish watching and finish the project, but you got a lot of the gist of it. So we haven't stopped to save our project yet. So let's go ahead and pre-transform this flamingo head a little bit to make sense. And then let's save. So I'm just going to go File, Save. And I'm going to name it Cloud Mingos Demo April 14th. And I'll put it in that same folder. It's just always a good idea to save, right? And then I'm going to get the Flamingos 2 in here again and steal the left side flamingo's head. So Object Select, click and drag, mask, switch to my Move tool, come down here. I'm going to free transform again, Command T, and shrink this one down. That makes sense. How are we doing? Have we made 2 Cloud Mingos yet? Do we need to see anything again? Charlene's doing good. Sorry, I'm fidgeting. All right, the next step is to make these clouds pink, right? We want them to be the same color as the flamingos. So there's a dozen different ways to change the color of something in Photoshop. I'm going to show you the way I like to do it because it's non-destructive and it doesn't create a new layer, an additional layer. So let's go ahead and look at Cloud 2. And what we're going to do is at the bottom of the layers, next to our mask, we're going to click FX, and we're going to choose Color Overlay. So make sure you're on one of your cloud layers, Color Overlay. Oh, you go to FX and then Color Overlay. And what this does normally is it just puts a color on there, right? It just fills the pixels with a color. And what we're going to do is select an appropriate color, and then we're going to use a blend mode so that it changes the color of the pixels in a dynamic way, in a way that maintains tone and detail. So is everybody in Color Overlay with me? All right. So now let's change the blend mode to overlay. You can see even a black overlay is just increasing the contrast. And then let's click on the color box. And what you're going to do is when you move your mouse outside, it becomes the eyedropper. So you can select any color on your screen. You can even go, well, no, you can't, just kidding. Sometimes you can go outside of the screen, the app. So just click on your flamingo and find a tone that works. I think one of those brighter ones is what's making sense. And that's really it. You can try different blend modes. Some will be more extreme or less extreme. In this case, I thought, well, vivid light's pretty good. That's not quite right. I don't like it becoming complete cotton candy. So vivid light and overlay. let's go with the vivid light. Why not? And then you just click OK. And you'll see that your layer now has an FX next to it and a description of the effects underneath, and you can bring them back or not. And then you can do it all over again. Or if you hold Alt or Option on your keyboard and drag the letter FX to the other cloud layer, it will copy that layer style over. Pretty fun. And then what I like to do at this point is click on the first cloud, hold Shift, and click on the second cloud layer, and put them in a group by pressing Command or Control G. That way, my layers panel doesn't get out of control. And let's go ahead and do that for the flamingos as well. You just double click on the name to rename it. How are we doing? Excellent. So now what we're going to do, and I think we'll have time to do some actual adjusting at the end of this too. I'm glad you like it, Charlene. I love it. I love it too. It's super fun. It's a really practical tool, and I think it's a fun way. It's fun to make something silly that you can use the tools to do non-silly things too. So what we're going to do now is add the little fishies under the water, because that was an important point of interest. So we'll grab fish and we'll drop it in. And it needs to be at the top of our layers. I think I just keep it at this size. I don't think I resize it. So I'll hit enter and I'm going to move it to the top. And with my move tool selected, I'm going to drag down here. I think I put it about there, making sure no fish are breaking the top of the water. And so the first thing we're going to do is make the water the fish are in more on the green side, because there's a color disagreement here. And there are a lot of ways to do this as well. What we're going to do is use an adjustment layer. So make sure you're on your fish layer. We are going to click on the other side of the mask, this little black and white cookie. And it's called Create a New Adjustment Layer. If you click that, you're going to choose Hue Saturation. And what this does is it puts a filter in your layers that adjusts any layer underneath it. And that you can edit it at any point, you can remove it at any point. So this is non-destructive. It never alters any pixels. Every single thing we've done so far has been non-destructive, so we can fix any mistakes that we make in the future. It's a good time to save too. I'm going to press Command or Control S and give it a little save. That's something I do without thinking while I'm working on something. I just Command S. Now, right now, if I start shifting the hue, it's going to adjust my entire image, because that's how adjustment layers work. They change any layer underneath it. But we can tell an adjustment layer to only adjust the layer directly beneath it by clicking this clipping mask button. And it says right here, this adjustment affects all layers below. Now, if I click it, it says this adjustment clips to the layer, which is saying it will only affect the layer beneath it. And you can see that's what it's doing. They made them blue. So let's not make them blue. Let's go maybe about -13. Yeah, that looks pretty good, -17. What I do is I just go back and forth, and you can kind of see the contrast that comes and goes. So I think -15 is about right. You can also play with the lightness if you think of making the lightness change a little bit, but I wouldn't go too much with it. And then the saturation increases or decreases the intensity of those colors. And I think in this case, maybe a little bit lower. So this is what we did. It went from blue to not really green, turquoise-ish. What do we think? Is everybody able to adjust the color? And depending on your screens, you might have decided on different colors because not all screens display colors the same. Excellent, got my thumbs up. So now what we're gonna do is mask out parts of the fish layer to blend it in because it looks like it's sitting on top of the picture. So we're gonna click on the fish layer. And this time, instead of making any selections or anything, we're just going to click on the mask. And what we're going to do is use our paintbrush to remove parts of the water. But we don't want to do it like this, where we create an obvious line. We want to do it gradually. We want it to blend out. So if we look at this one, I know it looks weird, but I painted these big feathered blobs and they create a kind of gradual shift from one part of the image to the other. So that's what we're going to do here too. So the first thing we'll do is use a bigger brush, which I press the bracket keys next to the letter P. So I do about a 400 pixel brush. And then if you right click, you want your hardness to be super low. I guess 12% is good. I would do 0 to 15%. And then up here where we check our other brush settings, we want our opacity to be like 20%. So you can click here and change it to 20, or you can press 2 on the keyboard. That's another keyboard shortcut I really like. When you're on your brush, it changes your brush's opacity. When you're on a layer on your move tool, if you press 2, it changes the layer's opacity. That's a good one. Okay, back to the brush. So now what we do is we just click and paint, going down in here and around. And you might take a minute to make it a little smaller and target the actual line. You might even make it really big to try and get this darker area. And I might actually bump my opacity up to 40% to try and get this line out a little quicker. Otherwise, I'm going to be painting here all day. But you end up with something about like this. And then what we're going to do is add a little adjustment to make it darker in the bottom. And then we'll also do something to add the mountains in here too, because I think a little reflection of them would make sense. I think in my years of teaching Photoshop, this has always been something that's hard for people to get used to. This is what I painted. You can see I eventually got to 100% black in some parts, and it kind of fades out. So it is going to be a user's choice, however you end up doing the blending. You guys want me to do it again, or do we feel pretty good? Sweet. So let's put the mountains inside where the water is breaking if we're ready. Are we ready? Let's also change the color of the mountains. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So what we're going to do is go back to our mountain layer and we're going to duplicate it. So there's a few ways to do that. What I'm going to do is just press Command or Control J. And I'm going to move it above the ocean. Ooh. It's interesting. It's cut off over here. I hope you guys did a better job than me. There we go. Okay, so I duplicated the mountains and moved it above the ocean. And what I'm going to do, I mean, maybe that's not quite right, but let's go ahead and do it anyway. I'm going to press Command or Control T, and I'm actually going to squish the pixels because I want it to get more inside there, and reflections are distorted. So to do that, I can't just drag it in at constraints proportions. I have to hold shift and just pull this up, maybe here, and then maybe pull this down too. So I'm just holding shift and making this pancaked version of it. And I mostly care about the part that is here. Actually, well, that's okay. And then what we're going to do is change the blend mode to, all right, hang on. We need to do something else first. Sorry. So now what we need to do is mask part of this mountain out from itself. I want it to only be inside of here. So what you're going to do is load a selection that you made before. You're going to hold Command or Control and click on the mask of your ocean layer. So hold Command or Control and click on the mask of your ocean layer. And then, excuse me, on our mountain copy layer, let's delete the mask that it has. So right click, delete, and then just mask it again. So that now, it's a little confusing to look at, but you can see it's only inside of that breaking water. And then what we'll do, I'll keep that hidden, is we'll try some different blend modes. So if you're on your move tool, you can press Shift plus to cycle through them and see which one is kind of fitting with what you need. That kind of makes sense. I think I liked, I think I might do hard light and just take the opacity way down so that we see some of the mountains in there. And then what we'll have to do is just grab our brush and paint with black at 100% opacity along this kind of edge so that it's only in the water, in the breaking part. And if you, what you might have noticed is I switched to white to bring back parts where I took away too much. And what I might have done if I was trying to get this perfect was actually select. Actually, let me show you that. What I would actually do is go to the ocean, grab my object selection tool, and select just the breaking water, and then go to the mountain and mask it. That way it's only in that breaking water and I'm not doing any manual painting. Sorry if I got a little zigzagged there on y'all. Would we like to see anything again? Yeah, I'm not sure this is the right effect, but we'll keep it. Okay. How are we feeling? Are we ready to do something else? What did I do? I'm glad. It's my pleasure. I did something weird on my ocean. I'm just going to grab a white brush and bring that part back. Ended up with some weird. Okay, we'll ignore it. I'm sure yours look good. And Charlene, I'm happy to hear that. So what we're going to do now is make an adjustment that just makes the bottom of the image a little bit darker because the ocean gets darker as you go further down, I think. I've never gone very far. So we're going to go to the top of our layers and we're going to go back to that cookie, which is next to the mask button. And we're just going to choose Well, let's just try exposure. And we'll just pull the exposure down. You know what? I don't like that one. Don't do exposure. Let's do levels. So I went to the top and I clicked levels on my adjustment layer cookie. And here where I see my mountain range, I'm going to pay attention really to the bottom here. So the middle triangle is my middle tones. If I move that to the left, they get darker. So I pull that, I'm sorry, to the right. Pull that in a little. And then the left triangle is the absolute darkest tones. If I shift that in, I will have more really dark parts. And what I want to do is have this adjustment fade from the bottom and basically not affect anything underneath there. I think I really want to go even darker. Okay. Were we able to put a levels adjustment on there? Sweet. So now what we're going to do is use the gradient tool, which what the gradient tool does is it draws a gradient, right? So right now it's drawing one that goes from white to green. When you select that tool and you're on a mask, it's going to draw from white to black. And with masks, white means show the adjustment or the pixels. Black means hide the adjustment, the pixels. And everything in between is show the adjustment at 10%, 30, 40, 50%. So if I were to drag from left to right, it would get dark on the left side and eventually get brighter. The longer I drag, let's look at this, the bigger the gradation. So if I do a short drag, it's a very short gradient. And if I hold shift, it will hold it to 45-degree angles. So what I probably want to do is just do a really tiny one from the bottom. Maybe a little bigger than that. And by the way, when I'm showing the mask like that, I'm holding Option and clicking on it. That's how you can kind of preview what is happening. I actually want to go further. There we go. So what I'll actually do is not drag from the bottom. Let's drag a little bit further up. And I think that's everything I wanted to do today. Maybe we could make the mountains a little cooler. Let's do that and then we'll call it done. So we're going to click on mountains. And again, there's 1,000 ways to do this. I just like to do it with levels. So I'm going to click on the black and white cookie, go to levels. And remember right now it's going to adjust anything underneath it. So I have to clip it. And what I'm going to do, so here I can adjust the brightness of things if I wanted to as well. But where it says RGB, I'm going to switch to red. And I'm going to pull the middle over to the right. I just think it made more sense for it to be on the cooler side with the kind of cooler pastels of the sky. So I did levels, I clipped it, I went to RGB and chose red, and I should drag the middle triangle to the right a little bit. And that's our final product. I do have an issue down here that is really bothering me. I'll have to figure out why that won't come back. Maybe there's nothing there. Okay, that's fine. It just means there's nothing there. I'm gonna clone stamp. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Okay. So that was our little composite party for today. As you can see, we did this together in about 45 minutes. If you do it on your own, you'll probably actually go a little slower and take your time to make more adjustments. Like this flamingo's legs, I'd probably like them to be a little bit darker. So I might push that in. If I wanted the clouds to have more contrast, I could go to the clouds group and clip a levels adjustment and adjust them a little darker too. So you would go and start to do your fine tuning of your image at this point. Are there any questions about Photoshop in general or about anything? This will be posted on that resource page. So if you forget anything, don't worry about it. I forget things all the time. But yeah, if there's anything else you'd like to see, it doesn't have to do anything with what we did today too. I'm here for the next 10 or more minutes. But if you are satisfied, feel free to head on out. You might want to save, and you might want to go File, Export, Export As, and make a little JPEG if you want to share with other people what you did. Where's my window? I bet it's here. There it is. Here's the Export As screen. You'll choose JPEG, and you can choose a size here. This is pretty big. I might shrink it down to like 1500 pixels tall, and I can get a preview of the size of it too. And then export to here. And my finished image is right here. Here's the Photoshop. They are identical to our eyes, but one is 170 megabytes, one's 361 kilobytes. So I could post this on social media, text it to my mom, whatever I might do. And yep, that's all. I'll be here if you have any questions. And thank you for joining me. I think I'll have to choose a different time for these workshops for the next series. I feel like a lot of people are having conflicts for them because we get a lot of enrollment and then a lot of people just can't after all.